This is the Zoom session for HIS 260 on the second day of May 2017. And this will be the last official Zoom session for this course. I have time set aside next week if someone wants to come in to discuss specific things, but this is the last official one for the course. Even though I did have more set up, I don't think we really need that one. So, as we were saying, and this goes back to something I said earlier in the course, and I've said it in previous courses, you really need to make sure that you're on the same page as the patient. But then you have to make sure you're in the same book as the patient, because their approach to that question and your approach to that question have to match as well.
And they have to have the same thing.
Yeah, I mean, you'll get people, did you work around any high-level noise? Nah. Well, what did you do? I ran a jackhammer. That's high-level noise. No, this one had a good muffler on it. Yeah, well, yeah. And this is what you have to deal with, because everything is relative to what they perceive as the truth. The self-perceived truth is reality for them. So you have to get inside their bubble of what reality is. There's a lot of psychology and a lot of counseling involved in what we do, because so much of it is subjective. And prior to real ear measurement, live speech mapping, all these other tools, it was completely subjective. Because you would find that, how does that sound? That sounds good. Okay, then I'm going to leave it. How does that sound? Oh, well, that doesn't sound good. But let's say if I'm talking at this level, this seems like an appropriate level, right? And two patients are sitting side by side. Both have identical hearing loss. Both have the identical settings on their hearing aids, and it's the same model and same manufacturer, same level of technology. Everything matches. And one goes, oh, that's so loud. And the other one goes, could you knock it up a notch? Why?
Well, it has their perceptions and what they feel is normal and what they feel is loud.
Exactly.
And I get that. I've got a question for you, though.
Sure.
All right, I had a patient. Actually, I've had two the past couple of days. I had one last week who was a full-blown audiologist, and it was her mom. So I knew I was definitely being watched like a hawk.
Mm-hmm.
I answered her question. Mom came in, mom sat down, both ears were completely occluded with wax. But even if their ears are occluded with wax, I'll still counsel them on different things. I'll ask them, hey, are you having trouble over the phone? Has anyone showed you how to hold the phone? Let's clean up your hearing aids. Let me reteach you how to clean your hearing aids, things like that. So I'll talk with them about that and explain different things. And her daughter's like, the last place that I took them to, they said she had no more headroom. And I knew what she was talking about with the hearing aids. They were older hearing aids. And she goes, can you at least pull them up? And I said, like, absolutely. I said, I'm not going to make any changes because, of course, I can't test her because her ears are occluded and everything. And, of course, the audiologist totally got that. Pulled them up, showed her that we've got headroom and things like that. She ultimately turned around and sent me an email that I got today. She thanked me for all the care and consideration I did for her mom because I referred her, back to her doctor to have her ears cleaned out. Mom brought up the fact that she's having a lot of sinus drainage and allergies because allergies are so prevalent. So they did some more things, put her on an allergy medicine. So the daughter was really happy. And then, Friday, I had a patient in the office. It was a speech pathologist.
Well, you've had a good week.
Oh, yeah. I had just a humdinger of a week. Speech pathologist, not only a speech pathologist, and keep in mind, in Tennessee, I used to work for a speech pathology group, so I had a pretty good understanding of the lay of the land and how that all works and comes together.
Mm-hmm.
She was a director of a speech pathology group. And of course, I brought up, I would ask her speech pathology questions. So she knew I knew something about it. She literally sat there the entire time on her phone playing solitaire. When you are trying to talk with a patient and consult with the family and include the family, how do you deal with that when someone's sitting there on their phone and they can't be bothered? Especially when they have a background like, oh man, I was mad at a hornet. Mad.
See, the thing is, the family dynamics is something that we have no control over whatsoever. When you have one family member, we had someone not too long before I left the clinic I was working in. We had one patient, the son brought her in.
Right.
When he remembered, when it was convenient, and this was a new fitting.
Okay.
So she missed her first follow-up. They canceled their second follow-up. They rescheduled the third follow-up. And we're going, she has to come in. The trial period is running and we have to see her. This is not something. And so we called the sister who was out of state, who called another brother who was in state, who took over. Because the other son, his priorities were, I'd rather sit at home, drink a beer and watch TV, or I'm going fishing today. Versus the one that said, okay, let's get mom through this and see if we can help her so she doesn't jump out of her skin every time I walk into the house because she doesn't hear me knocking.
Right.
There's different dynamics. You can't force family to be involved. Or when you have a family member that as you're saying something and the patient goes, oh, I do that. And the family member goes, no, you don't. No, you don't. No, I watch you. You don't understand that at all. No, I do understand. And then you have to deflect from that and go, well, all right, it was watching the news. Do you miss some of the newscast? Well, it depends on who's talking. Okay, is it the fast talker? Is it the woman anchor? Is it the male anchor? Who's the one that you're... So now you're getting away from the criticism of the child and the patient going, well, no, I'm, and they're in a defensive mode. So they're not answering your question. They're defending their position. And you have to get back off of that and go, oh, well, some people do have problems with this, and this. Are you having any of those? Because then, and now they're talking with you about their case again. Sometimes you don't want the family involved, but you want them there so they can't say you didn't cover something.
Okay.
You can't force interest, and that's the sad part of it. You can get some family members that will drive you crazy because what they want and what can actually feasibly be achieved are two different things. Because I want mom to hear perfectly. Well, I've done real ear, I've done the speech mapping, we're giving her sufficient amplification, but that she has dementia, she has cognitive dysfunction. So, I'll say something and she will sit there and go, oh, okay, that sounds good. And that's not the answer you were giving her. But you could, Mom, do you want to go out to eat dinner? Oh, okay, that sounds good. Mom, you want to wash my car? Okay, that sounds good. I mean, she knew you were asking a question and she's agreeing with you, but she didn't understand your question.
Right.
And it has nothing to do with how she's hearing. Now, the only way to verify that is to know that you've run the real ear and that with the same response, no changes in the hearing loss, you've watched the discrimination deteriorate over a period of 1.5 years. So their understanding went from 68 or 70%, down to 45%, down to 16%, and their hearing didn't change at all. And when you make changes to the response, the comment isn't, oh, that's clearer, it's, that's different. You know, it gets very awkward in some cases, and in the meantime, the child is going, why can't she understand? Well, she has dementia. Have you talked with your family doctor? Have you talked, you know, because you can't make a diagnosis of dementia.
No.
You can say they seem to have some cognitive dysfunction. I think what we need to do is have her evaluated by a neurologist. So I'll write a report to your primary saying that we're seeing some type of difficulty and we'd like to have him recommend further investigation. You know, so now you could say you've kicked the bucket or kicked the can down the road.
Right.
But you haven't really. You're following clinical protocol. I am not in a position to make this determination or this diagnosis. Let's send her to the person to find out if that has become the problem. And if it is, we know more about the limitations. If the person finds that she is perfect as far as function, there's no dementia, then we've got some major issues to work with. But everything is pointing to that. So you have to cover your own behind. But yeah, it's like, I mean, your week sounds like, you know, an audiologist, a speech pathologist, all you needed was an electrical engineer. Then you would have been really having a great week. But
It was a bit. Another question for you. I have a patient who, because I'm fully running in my clinic, so I'll see anywhere from 6 to 7 tests a day.
okay.
And, I had a patient did a complete exam. Her ears were clear. She had air bone gap, and I explained to her. I said, I really want you to go and see an audiologist. And I said, I know you've seen an audiologist before, but I would like you to go back because there's some additional testing that they can offer that I can't do here, that I would just like them to go over possible options with you. And left it at that, as vague as I could, And I told her, I explained to her, I said, looking at your audiogram, when I had the headphones on you, these are the blue X's for your left ear, these are the red circles for your right ear, and the greater than or less than sign, or the brackets, should match up with those marks from when I had the headphones on. And I explained to him, I said, remember when I had just that headband on your head? Those are bone conduction, and those should match up with when you have your headphones on. That's what I said, looking at your audiogram, that's not what I'm seeing, and that's why I want you to go back and see the ENT. And she called me. She's like, Virginia, I don't know. I just don't want to go back. I don't want to go back. And I said, do you want me to send you to someplace else? I said, I just want you to go and talk with them. They'll file the claim to your insurance so you just hear what your options are. If you ultimately don't decide to do that, that's fine. That is your choice. But I'd like you to know your options. How would you, I realize you're an audiologist and everything, but how in that kind of circumstance would you word, how do you get that across to a patient who's...
I am very, very partial to visual aids.
Okay, like what?
So have a diagram, a nice little drawing of the ear. One of those cutaway sections that shows the outer ear, the middle ear, the inner ear, mastoid, a little cross section of the ear.
Gotcha.
And if it's laminated, all the better. You can use erasable marker. And you can put it down and say, okay, here's the cochlea. This is where the switches are, that when these switches are flicked, it goes right up to the brain. This is the end. This is like the retina in your eye. This is where the sound is picked up. Going this way through the outer ear, through the middle ear, those three little bones there, and going in is how it gets transmitted. So this is how you normally hear. And you can draw in a big plug of wax. So now if there's something blocking it here, the sound can't get in. You put in earplugs, put your finger in your ear. But if your body has produced a plug of wax, that's one thing. You don't have that, so you can erase it. If something's going on in here, and it could be anything, it could be a head cold, it could be allergies, it could be, depending on how well you know the person, I have actually seen and documented cases of arthritis of the acicula chain.
Oh, wow.
Which has increased the resistance of the acicula chain and given a permanent hearing loss. I have had people who had multiple infections as children, and they developed something called fibrosis of the acicula chain, where you have, from the infected material, it built basically strands of cobwebs and gunk, which weighs down the acicula chain, which increases the mass, which increases the resistance, which reduces the sound coming through. So basically just saying, you could have a cold. This is allergy season. We want to find out what's doing it. And if it's something that we can correct with medication, why not do it? Because really, normal hearing is better than any kind of amplified device, just like normal vision is better than any glasses you can get.
Right.
So what we want to do is make sure that everything is working the way it's supposed to work. And what this is showing is that there's something going on in here that I can't see, but I'd like the doctor or the audiologist or the otolaryngologist, whoever you're referring them to, I would like them to evaluate it to really get to the bottom of it. Then we can work on a solution for the rest of the problem. So basically you're saying, yes, I want to take you here. I want to take you to this solution, but I want to make sure it's the right solution. So if we've got something going on in this little middle ear that I have no control over and I can't see, and you don't want to go into, well, I don't have a tympanometer, so I really can't measure it. And sometimes you'll use a tympanometer and it'll show a normal middle ear function, but the reflexes are absent. Okay, well, that could be a whole different ball game. But there's a number of other things. So even if you have a tympanometer, you may end up with that question. And if the guidelines state, if there is an air-bone gap of 10 dB or more, medical clearance is required.
Right.
You got to refer them. But you don't want to scare them half to death, because then they go into the doctor and go, I've got a tumor in my middle ear. And then the doctor looks at you and goes, I'm not going to send anybody there. They're crazy.
Right.
Yeah. So you're treading a fine line, but this is why I like having the diagram, to have the picture so you can draw and circle the middle ear and say, right here, something's going on, but since the eardrum's there, I can't see. If I could just sort of go, oh, okay, but I can't. So now, if you can make them smile while you're explaining it to them, do it. You can do the little kid. Yeah, so there's this middle ear. So I can't see through the eardrum, but if I could do this, I could look in and then clear. But I can't. And that's usually when I go, I remember when my granddaughter was little and I used to do this. She'd laugh, but no, you're too old for that, aren't you? Okay, now, do we really have to do this? Well, by law, because we have this, we definitely are required to. But from my standpoint, I would feel much better having this done to rule out any unusual or off the beam or just something that I don't know about causing a problem down the road. And this is really to protect you. And that's why we want to do it. So you're putting it back again, showing your desire to provide the best and maintain their function. But pictures are worth 1,000 words. I mean, that's a very true thing. And when you can do it in front of them, they're more apt to believe you. There are some videos that some of the manufacturers have in their software, but you have to go into their software and pull it up. I know, see who has that. I think Starkey may have that in their counseling. I know Oticon does. But also, if you look back at some of the PowerPoints that we have, if you go back, there's one that shows the sound waves hitting the eardrum, going through the middle ear and going in, and explains wax, fluid, and so on. And if you could just download that segment or take that PowerPoint and put it into a standard file instead of the PowerPoint, or use it in a PowerPoint program on your computer, and just show that to them and just say, see, now watch, this is the sound wave. And you can see the sound wave. Now, see, there's fluid. So, you know, again, moving visual aids are good. The static picture with the, you know, being able to draw on it is good. But just try to make it as concrete, because when you're talking about abstracts and you're picturing a middle ear in your head, they aren't.
Right.
So you want to make it as apparent to them as it is to you. Of course, if it's an engineer, that's another whole story.
Okay, next week. Yeah, we're doing all we're just any cattywampus clinical stuff. I just want to pick your brain and hear what you have to say about it.
More than happy to.
Jesse doesn't get the show tonight. Tonight I get the show.
Now, I've been told I have a picky brain. Well, no, that's weird.
All right, I have a patient who, bless her heart, she's a hypochondriac. Lord love a duck.
I've never heard that before. Okay.
Oh yeah, I'm full of funny sayings. She went from staying at home taking care of her elderly husband, who has since passed away, out and about doing funeral arrangements, seeing family, being out and about with friends, just trying to live a little. And she can't get used to her own voice. She's like, I can't hear men, so I'll turn up the lows a little bit to help her hear men's voices, because I did a complete exam on her. Everything was normal. Clear pathway for her eardrums on both ears. Existing user, long-term user. She needs new aids. One of them constantly cuts on and off, but she won't send the bloody thing in, even though I've asked her repeatedly. She can't stand her own voice. She says it's too loud and booming. So in other words, it sounds hollow, like she's in her head. So for that, you turn down the lows so she doesn't hear herself. And then she says, I can't hear men, which are in the lows, so you can't turn it up. So how do you get it across to a patient, or how do you counsel her to help her?
Okay, when you're adjusting the lows.
Uh-huh.
Now, first of all, these are open fit or closed fit?
Open fit, even open domes, because she's pretty normal in the lows.
Mm-hmm.
There's Oticon flips. So they're a couple of years old, the hearing aids.
Okay. Using an open fit, when you raise the lows, most of that's going to bleed out, but you actually are increasing the low frequency resonances. So she, being closest to the hearing aid, hearing herself louder, is going to get more of a resonance to that, depending on the pitch of her voice and some other things. If she needs it louder to perceive voices, raising 1,500 cycles, not the lows, but 1,500, will give her a perceived loudness increase, and she should be able to hear voices better.
Okay, so leave 125, 250, and 500 alone and increase
Right.
1,000 hertz.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Because If she's fine with the 250 and 500 and she has fairly good hearing and it's an open fit, that's only going to give her a, what would you call it? It's entering something that you don't need. It's an unnecessary ingredient.
Okay.
Okay. 1500 is going to be giving her enough, depending on how steep the slope is coming down. 1500, she's going to say, okay, that's louder. And keep in mind, the primary difference between hearing and understanding men and hearing and understanding women isn't always in the lows. The consonant sounds are the clarity issues.
Right.
The primary difference between male voices and female voices is usually considered to be the formant frequencies, those bursts of energy that occur between the vowel and the consonant.
Right.
And if those bursts of energy are pointing to S, you'll say, okay, they said S, even if you don't really hear it clearly as an S. Okay, it's heading toward T, even if it's not clearly perceived as a T. Because the male voice has a lower resonant pitch to start with, you have more road signs, more markers giving you the indication than on a female voice. So possibly giving a 1500 boost, 1500 hertz boost, and not on the loud, but on the moderate and low input. You have to be careful with the soft input because you're pushing the gain. And sometimes you may only want to take up the moderate. But also look at the compression ratios because that can have an effect also. But taking up the 1500 and then giving a little bit of a boost at the 2500 to 3500 range may give crisper understanding of the consonants with an increased loudness perception, and she'll do better with both men and women.
Okay.
If the compression ratio is, I don't like going above 2. I usually like, like 1.9, 1.87, 1.7, something like that. But I have seen some of the Oticon systems, because they're going for a more cushioned sound, a smoother sound, where they have a compression ratio on an initial algorithm of 3.0. And that's going to compress when she talks and give her kind of a muffled, occlusive effect on her voice, but better on distant voices. The men's voice might trigger that kind of compression because they're carrying a little bit more energy in the lows. So there's a number of things you have to look at.
Okay. If she comes back in, I think I'm going to call Oticon directly and be like, all right, y'all.
Oh, yeah.
Help me out. And I don't hesitate. And I tell my patients that, and it's received really well.
Yeah, the best thing that I have said to patients is, okay, I've tried everything that I can think of. Let's see if they can think of something that I haven't tried, and I'll learn from them as well. Let's go for it. Because again, you're saying, I don't have all the answers, but I know where to go.
And I'm willing to go there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I've always looked at it this way, because this is how I felt. If a doctor, if someone who's treating me admits that they don't have all the answers and that they will do research, and then you do it, I have more respect for them than the ones who go, well, no, I've never heard of that one before.
Yeah.
Well, I know you haven't heard of that one before, but this is what I'm having, so now you've heard of it. Yeah. Doc, it hurts when I do that. Well, then don't do that. That's, just, I think I broke my rib. Well, can you afford treatment? No. Well, I have a good friend who can touch up your x-rays for you. Yeah. It doesn't make sense. Those are old vaudeville jokes. So that kind of stuff has been around for a long, long time.
Yeah.
You don't want to avoid doing the correction. but you don't want to do it wrong. And sometimes the changes that the algorithm or automatic setting will do will be too much or too little. If you go down into the Oticon software and you go to the suggestions.
Fitting assistant, yeah.
Yeah. And you put your cursor over what it's going to do, like you're going to take it down on that slide bar. If you put your cursor over where you're going to go, it'll say -2 mid, -2 high. Well, you may want to do -2 high, -1 mid. So they don't get, so you have to get a feel for it, because sometimes the automatic is doing what they have had success with in the past, but you're not going to have success with right now because your patient is different.
Right.
So try to understand when they put those things in. And I'll tell you, I learned a lot over the years prior to working with it, but in the software, I like to know what it's doing. When I say fix it and it goes, okay, well, how much are you fixing it? I always watch the tracing. When I click on something and I'm watching a whole segment go down, wait, undo. I want to do this. I want to do this, not this.
Right.
Take the time. And I've had patients go, well, what are you doing? What are you doing? I'm going, it's very much like a recipe. I'm putting in a pinch of this, a dash of that, because what you do best with may not be in their cookbook, but we can still do it because I know how to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And you can see in some patients, you immediately go up 2 or 3 steps in their perceived competency. They're going, oh, okay. And it's not perfect. It's not something you just go, here it is. It's not Eggos. It's an actual pancake. It's not the standard. This is customized for you, and I'm going to be very careful when I do that.
Right.
So again, perceived competency, knowledge, and ability is as important than actually having the competency, the experience, and the knowledge. They both have to go there. You can be the smartest person on earth in this field, and if they don't perceive that you have that, they're not going to think you're any good.
Yeah. No, the biggest thing that patients say to me, and I love it, and I hear it all the previous hearing instrument specialist didn't always do all the testing. And more often than not, people will say to me, that's the most thorough test I've had. And I don't say anything bad about the previous. I always tell them, when you came in, I told you that I'm a firm believer in information is our power. And I think it's only fair to provide you with all the information.
Exactly. But keep in mind, when they say they never did that part of the test, and you look at the previous test and you know darn well that they did do bone conduction.
Oh, but that's the sad thing. They didn't.
Oh, God, that's required.
Never
mind. Never mind. Oh, God.
And that's the thing. I have to take what the previous test results show with a grain of salt, because I had one patient who his last audiogram that was in the chart, it was reading normal, and then I did his test, and it was all cattywampus. And I immediately sent him to Topeka ENT. I'm like, I want you to go see ear, nose, and throat specialist. I want to have this checked out. Some things aren't quite adding up the way I'm used to seeing them. I want to make sure everything is good to go before we do anything else. And sure enough, they sent back a note saying, yeah, he's had this problem since 2006. He's seen us before. And I felt like a fool but I was referring to his last test, which didn't indicate that. And of course, Topeka ENT sent me his, they did an audiogram as well, and they sent me those results, which matched up with the pattern, and everything was the same as what I did. So I'm like, okay, good.
Right. That's good for a number of reasons. Well, first of all, I just looked up under clinical descriptions, cattywampus, and
That's a real word.
Cattywampus? Okay, never mind. Right. I'm presuming you mean all over the place.
No, cattywampus.
Okay. Okay. Mark that one down. But I have seen that where I'm doing a test and their sensorineural threshold at 500 and 1,000 have improved by both air and bone.
Yeah.
And I know that they were tested in an area that didn't have sufficient sound control. This is one of the reasons I like using insert phones. So you will get some strange responses. Oh, we've got somebody by phone. Okay.
Hey there, it's Rochelle.
Hello. You missed some funny stuff. We were looking up the clinical term cattywampus.
It sounds like a term my mother's using.
How did you know?
Grown up with that one.
Good. What does it mean? Anyway, but basically we're covering patient needs, patient concepts, perception, not only getting on the same page, but the same book as the patient. One of the biggest things that I found, most people, and I've seen this posted on walls and Facebook pages, the problem with today's world is we listen to respond rather than listening to understand. And this is where I get upset when they give you counter arguments. When the patient says this, you should have, this is the answer you should give. Well, wait a minute. Why did the patient say that? What is their perceived reason for stating something to me? I'm not listening to respond. I'm listening to understand. Then I respond with the understanding of what they're saying. And if I don't understand, I'll ask more questions. And that's a big, big, big part of our profession. Counseling, listening, responding to the individual. Because again, individual adjustments and determination is what we're working with. These are very, very customized fittings. And this is why I think what's going to happen with the over-the-counter hearing aids, everybody's looking at it as, oh, this is going to be so great because everybody's going to be able to buy them because they're going to be so much cheaper. People don't buy hearing aids because they're cheaper. Even if they're good, they buy them and use them because they work. Would I like it if the cost of hearing aids was lower? Absolutely. Do I think we would have a better, what would you call it? See, this also happens when you get old. A better percentage of
usage.
That's the word, of hearing aids if the cost was not so high. Yes. If it was cheap, no. Because people perceive cheap as cheap.
Mm-hmm.
Reasonable and inexpensive are different than cheap.
Yes.
Should hearing aids cost $3,000 to $4,000 a year? Well, I'd like it if they didn't, but if a unit costs me close to $2,000 and I'm going to be working with this patient for hours over the next 3 years, I have to charge that.
Right.
And the perception of, well, we'll unbundle. You say, here's your service package for unlimited visits, blah, 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 blah. And the person goes, well, I'll pay. If I come in, I'll pay. And then they never come in, and the aid goes in the drawer. And they tell their friends, I spent all this money and this.
Right.
When what they did was, they got an assistive device of any kind, a brace, a cane, and they never learned how to use it properly. And hearing aids are more complex than that. Oh, I got bifocals. I hated them. Where did you have the bifocal one? I don't know, wherever they put it. Well, I'm very specific. When I was wearing bifocals, they would say, okay, here's the lower lid. This is where it should be. And I'd go lower, lower. Okay, now it's good. Because I could perceive that line. So my generic bifocal level, which was correct by research and studies, was wrong for me. Right? Their perceived correct was wrong for me. Over the counter, I think we're going to see this when they say, oh, the person can adjust it. How many patients do you have where you feel that they are cognizant enough and perceptive enough to adjust their own hearing aid?
I don't. I only have a few tech savvy.
Mm-hmm.
Very few.
Now, down the road, that's going to change. We're getting more and more younger people with more and more of a hearing loss, noise-induced hearing loss, perceived problems, and they will come in and start making adjustments and fine-tuning these things. And these are the people like my daughter. She's 30. On a computer, I say, what would you do? I'm having trouble with this. There, it's fixed. Okay, what did you do? I fixed it. How did you fix it? She can't explain it to me. She tries. I think in pictures and she thinks in words, but I'm not sure. But
my son-in-law thinks I'm stupid.
Yeah.
I just throw it at him and say, just do it.
Sometimes that's the best approach. And I have people, I'll say, okay, I can give you a program for conferences, for lectures, for TV, and for normal use. I just want to put it on and leave it. Okay. Keep it simple. I want it to do I want it to be smart enough. Well, if you're getting the Yugo of hearing aids, you can't expect it to have the heated massaging seats of a Cadillac. The two don't go together.
Right.
So
a lot of my patients that will do bad with like an iPhone to use as a remote, but if they actually buy the remote, they do so much better than they do just reaching up and making the changes on the actual hearing aid, because for once with the remote, there's minimal buttons and they can see what they're doing.
Right. The Starkey remote I liked for a number of reasons. I could make it as complex or as simple by changing the face. So you could make it just volume control. And it had two arrows, one up and one down. That was it. Or you could make it program change, mute, raise and lower, change the memory. You could have all these things involved. Just the right, just the left. Well, some people, they can't, it's like, well, which button do I push? Here, let me fix that. Okay, now you have volume control and memory change. That's it.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Well, do I have to carry this? No, you can change it on the hearing aid. But I think it's easier when you go, oh, it's right here. Here you go. And sometimes the smartphones, again, as you said, they're not tech savvy. Working off of an iPhone, it's different. You've got that screen, and sometimes the screen lags, or they tap it and their finger was cold and it didn't take it. So they didn't hit it with their fingernail to make it go. They hit it with the meat of the finger and it didn't work. So they have to heat it again or go, get a little moist heat on their finger. And they can't do that. They push a button. You know, some of the newer audiometers are that way, where you touch a sensitive spot and it'll do it. And as your finger dries out, it doesn't work. So I've had it where I've gone, okay, to make it work. Well, why do I have to rub my finger on the palm of my hand to make a button work? Because it doesn't respond to cold fingers, or it doesn't respond to dry fingers, you know, whatever. You know, cute is nice, but functional is better. So you're absolutely right. Sometimes the remote, actual remote, works much better than the smartphone. I've got people with flip phones.
The fingering process is much simpler too between a remote, because a remote is just a button and closing usually the back of the hearing aid, whereas with the phone it's several different steps that they don't even go into those features into their phone.
Right. Their big thing is, I answer the phone, I hang up the phone. I don't listen to music on my phone. I don't text my friends. I play solitaire on my phone, but you know, and that's their phone. Some of them don't even play solitaire. It's flip, hello, yeah, and that's it. So absolutely, you have to work with the comfort level of the patient.
More often than not, my patients don't even want their volume control on. They want to set it and forget it.
Mm-hmm. And I have found, and I've told patients this, because I'll say, you know, I'll go, well, a friend of mine has one and it has volume control. I said, well, I don't like turning that on in the beginning, because if you don't need it, it actually becomes a hindrance. Because what will happen is you'll start going, oh, that's a little loud. Oh, that's a little soft. Yeah. Where's normal? You don't remember what normal is. And maybe that was a little loud and that was a little soft. So don't change that, because I can't change my ear.
Right.
You know, I'm sitting there and somebody's talking to me. So, how are you doing it? Hey, I hear you fine. Quiet down. Or as my wife would say to my daughter, inside voice. Actually, it says that more to my granddaughter. My daughter, she says, don't use your teacher voice. Because she does that to me too. Dad, why are you doing? We're out of class. Bring it down. She teaches middle school. But the patient using the volume control loses their reference of normal, and I counsel them on that. In order for you to get a better idea of what's loud and what's soft, I want you to have, like your glasses, single prescription. You can't make it stronger or weaker. There's no adjustment on it. It's there. And if it corrects you to 20/20 vision, and you look at something and you can't read it, what's the first thing you say? You don't say, these glasses are no good. Well, maybe you do, but most people will say, well, that's too far away. I can't make it out. We accept that visually, but we don't accept it auditorily.
Yeah. Patients. You're spot on.
Yeah, I mean, what I loved, and I always tell them this story. My granddaughter took one of my business cards, and she was going to show me something, and she goes, Pop, look at this. You know, and we're looking here, right? You think that's a little close? Yeah. And I would grab her hand and go, oh, okay. And they'll go, well, I go, okay, here. And I hold it up to them. Can you read that? And they'll go, no, pull it back a little bit. I go, why? Why? When is it clear? Okay, that's good? Okay. All right, how about now? Read the bottom line. And they go, well, it's too far away. So what you're saying is that size print at that distance is not good. Right, okay. But this size printing at that distance, you could read. Yeah, so this size printing is good. Okay. Now, if I'm talking to you and I go, so anyway, I was just wondering, you think maybe later we could go out and maybe have a little bite to eat. I could hear that. I go, okay, I'm going to go over here. I'm going to talk to you like this. Make out. And I go, you're too far away. Right. That level of sound at that distance is inappropriate. Just like that size print at that distance is inappropriate. The hearing aid is not a miracle. It will not let you hear someone across the room if someone with normal hearing would go, what? There are times for us to say what and times for us not to say it.
Yeah.
When the perceived level is appropriate, we don't say what. Unless, of course, we're reading a book, then we have to get their attention. And that's when I always stress patients, there's a number of ways of doing that, especially if their family member is there. I go, first, Bob, what? Blah, blah, blah. Not blah, 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 because by then on the third word, he goes, what? And even if he hears you, he's missed the first three words. Let me say it again. Or, oh, never mind, which is a phrase that's hated throughout the industry. So I tell them, say the name, get his attention. And if he doesn't respond to his name, throw a Nerf ball at him, hit him with a bat, whatever. Get his attention, then ask him the question. Well, what if I'm in another room? That's a different problem.
Yeah.
Walls. Or, what I love, you're standing next to a fan. If the person talking to you was next to the fan, they'd talk like this. But they're in the next room where it's nice and quiet. So they talk like this. And they're talking, so you go, what? Never mind. Well, if it wasn't that important, why did you say it to me? You have to get into this too. The family has to interact and learn. It's not strictly the person with the hearing loss's job to make life better for them. They're making life better for themselves. And the other family members have to be flexible enough to sometimes make changes like saying the name, getting the attention. Hey, psst. Oh, what? If I'm reading a book and someone talks to me, I don't respond. Not that I didn't hear them, but my focus is here, not there.
I always had to tell the wives to stop doing dishes and trying to talk to their husbands while they're also watching TV at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
I kept telling them no one can hear during that. It's like you have to turn off the dishes, turn off the sink, turn off the TV, and then they'll be able to hear you.
Mm-hmm. And even if that's not the case, they have to quiet down their thing and not expect the person to hear them with the noise level they're creating, so they're not going to hear the response, and the noise level the other person's having, and their focus is on the TV and your focus is on the dishes. We're made for a North Korean negotiation right there. Nobody's going to get it. That was my little political humor for the day. Okay. But so, these are some of the things, and this all plays in. Having the ability to know the difference between, well, I still hear my tinnitus. When? Okay, shh. There it is. Well, if I have floaters in my eye, and if I really kind of squint and look toward a light at an angle, boy, yeah, look at them. Boy, they're all over the place. You know how often I do that? Never. I had a patient, I think you may remember I used this in another class. fit ear mold, it was custom made, fitted, beautiful, did all the tests, no feedback, it was great. Comes in, it whistles. When does it whistle? Whenever I do this. And he had his head down by his ankle. And he's like, in his mouth, oh, I'm going to draw this. I said, don't do that. When do you do that? Well, I was trying to find out if it would whistle. Okay. Don't do it. If it doesn't feedback during your normal life, I can force anything. You want to do this, you can make it whistle. This is before the feedback reduction circuits. But patients will give you answers and questions that you will not be prepared for. Try not to laugh at them. Laugh with them, but don't laugh at them.
Right.
Or the guy who complained that he couldn't hear a blessed thing out of the hearing aids. And he had them, the canal portion was sticking out of the ear with the faceplate in. And I went, let's try this. I took the aids, one from each side, put them in the correct ears, because he had them switched on top of it. And he goes, oh, that's so much better. Don't tell my daughter. I've been complaining all week. I told the daughter. I said he had them in improperly. I didn't say he had them in the wrong ears facing the wrong way. Sort of like wearing your glasses like this.
Yeah.
Does not work. Anyway, anything else?
Well, we've got to be just about out of time. Okay, so final is still going to be 100 multiple choice and true false.
It's 75.
Oh, it's 75 now.
Yeah.
Okay, so 75 multiple choice, true false. Know the quizzes.
Yeah, I mean, it's basically all from material that we have covered. I'm not trying to put any surprises in it. A lot of the material that we've reviewed, as I said, I'm trying to, like the question I was asking you before, that type of phrasing, I'm trying to, make it more American than Canadian. Because Mr. Ven, a lot of Dr. Venema's material is written in Canadian, and I was just using it because I understood what it said, but then I realized most English-speaking people wouldn't, because some of the questions that were coming up on the quizzes were
Caddywhack.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. Oh, that's going to go into my dictionary. Okay. Now, I'm very good at kinda, sorta. Is that it? Kinda, sorta.
Kind of, sort of.
Now, most of the stuff is going to be more direct questions. Some of the questions that have appeared in previous quizzes, it might be a little bit of a twist on one of the questions that was there. It's like, you remember I was talking about the Williams Pocket Talker being a wonderful wireless assistive device, and it was wrong because why?
It's not wireless.
That's it. So, I mean, look for opposites of questions that were in the previous tests as well. So understand it. If you've got questions, as I said, I'll be available, next Tuesday as well. If there's something in between, just either text me. We can set up a Zoom session, and or we can just talk on the phone, whichever way. Okay.
Now, when are we doing the exam?
The exam is still going to be available on the 11th. I'm going to be talking with Ms. Kraus, and I'm going to see if I can move it up a little bit, but the 5th, I'm not going to be able to do.
Okay.
because of that end of semester requirements, and they usually set up, this is when exams are set.
Okay. And I understand. I appreciate, you asking. That's the main thing.
Okay.
Because most of us who are in the class right now are all graduating.
Mm-hmm.
So if someone is pulling out at this 11th hour, they're tanking big time.
Yeah.
And they should have pulled out before now.
Yeah. It's like that story I think I told you of the one student who wanted to be an audiologist. I was teaching an introductory course, and nice guy, sweet personality, caring heart. I mean, wonderful. Could not grasp the mathematics of logarithmic progression of the decibel, the signal to noise rate. I mean, just could not get those concepts. And I'm not used to having students that get Fs. And he was bombing so badly, I made a deal with him that if he changed majors, I'd give him a passing grade, because I didn't want to ruin his student assistance program.
Yeah.
But I mean, it was, no, I'm not going to do this unless you change majors, because I'm not going to be the one to send you forward to have someone else go, how could you have passed that? Yeah, I can't do that. And I have supervised audiologists for the clinical fellowship year. Right? This was before the doctorate came out. It was like master's level. They're out and they're supposed to be working for a year, and you supervise them and you ask them questions and make sure that they're doing proper clinical procedure. And this one person, I was like, how did she pass? How did she get to the level of having this? I don't want this person in the field with me. I don't want this person saying that they have the same credentials that I do, because she has no idea. I've also met guys, but this particular one was female. And she just, it was embarrassing. And her supervisor from the university was pressuring me. I mean, we had some horrible fights, but that's how we have some of those wonderful people out there in the field. It was like, oh, that's a nice person, I think I'll pass them. And the one question that I've asked many people, what do they call the medical student that graduates last in his class? Doctor. What do they call the student who graduates first in his medical class?
Doctor.
Right. Who would you rather be treated by?
Somebody in the middle.
In the middle, right. Somebody who had to work for it and did a good job. Not necessarily the first, but I really don't want the last. I want a diagnostician, somebody who thinks differently and will look at things and not go, because sometimes it's not the book learning, it's the application.
Yeah.
Okay, I have my biases too. All right, I think, as you said, we've just about had it. We're probably up to our 40-minute session. We're probably going to get cut off before the end of this. As I said, I'm going to leave the next Tuesday session open. It's not this is the last complete official Zoom session for the course, and it will be posted with the other recorded ones. Next week, it's just going to be open, and if anybody needs any additional information or additional time, they can just text or call.
Okay. Sounds like
in the meantime, have fun, and if you want pointers on how to handle electrical engineers being fit, I can give you those too.
I didn't have any of those, but it's early in the week yet.
You just have to learn a couple of the words.
All right. You have a great evening.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, guys.
Take care.
You too.